Hello, we've come to the last programme in this series, and before we begin, a gift from an anonymous listener has just been delivered to the studio. So I'm just going to unwrap it, see what's inside. Oh, it's an old book. Let me just brush off the dust. The Hitchhiker's Guide to Brexit. Well, that could be handy because we're on a mission today, heading for one of the most mysterious and unpredictable places in the galaxy. Planet Trump. That's because our question-generating, space-hopping Radio 4 Wheel of Fortune wants to know...
Question. What might Donald Trump mean for Brexit?
Or as we say in American...
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
OK, well, with that in mind, the first bit of advice our Hitchhiker's Guide gives us is probably the best advice of all.
It has the words, "Don't panic," inscribed in large, friendly letters on the cover.
Can we just play that again?
Don't panic.
And breathe, because you can still breathe here on Planet Trump, even if the atmosphere is sometimes a little different. But when it comes to Brexit, the 45th President of the United States has been pretty clear.
I think it'll turn out to be a good thing. The UK has been such a great ally for so long. They'll always be at the front of the line. They've been amazing allies, in good times and in bad times.
So, is Donald Trump himself good for Brexit, in particular when it comes to the most pressing issue of all? Who will we be trading with and how in our new post-EU universe? A question for the economist, Andrew Lillico.
Good for Brexit. I don't know that that's quite the way I would put it. I think that Donald Trump wants to do a trade deal with the UK. I think that that's pretty clear.
The most protectionist president since the 1930s?
He may well be the most protectionist president since the 1930s, but he wants to deal with the UK. Just because he's protectionist with everybody else doesn't mean that he'll be protectionist with us. He wants to do a deal with us as his flagship to demonstrate what a good deal with a peer economy looks like.
But he's not going to come to us cap in hand, is he? I mean, it's America first.
Well, he's the one who's, as much as anything, taking the initiative of proposing to have a deal. I'm not saying he's coming to us cap in hand, absolutely, but it's not a question of us going to him in any way as any kind of supplicant, so we want to move quickly and seize the deal while it's there.
In other words, we should boldly go where no man has gone before. Oh no, sorry, wrong universe. The trouble with Planet Trump is that there's so much uncertainty, and that is a shaky basis for a special relationship. I wonder if the Hitchhiker's Guide has any advice.
All you really need to know for the moment is that the universe is a lot more complicated than you might think, even if you start from a position of thinking it's pretty damn complicated in the first place.
Well, that certainly applies to trade deals. Yes, Mr. Trump says he wants to deal with us. Yes, maybe we can be more nimble outside the EU. But black holes have a habit of appearing in some rather unexpected places, as the former US trade negotiator Jennifer Hillman explains.
How do we wash our chickens has become such a huge issue in terms of trade between the United States and the EU.
Did she say wash our chickens?
Wash our chickens, even though trade in poultry products is a tiny blip on the trade horizon. The fact that we tend to wash our chicken with products that contain chlorine has become a huge source of trade friction, and I think fairly unexpected by the United States.
I have to confess I didn't know there was a chicken washing dispute.
Yes, and it has been very dominant in many discussions. And so the fact that at a very high level, trade negotiators are getting engaged in how we do or do not wash our chickens and whether one or the other methodology does or doesn't do a better job of addressing salmonella problems has loomed very large. Those regulatory issues, those are among the hardest issues to address, and that will be the same thing in negotiations with the UK.
So we're not exactly going to have that deal in the next few months with Donald Trump that people on some of those who are more optimistic on both sides seem to be talking about.
No, I think Donald Trump has said he's planning for both a quick and a fair trade deal in a few weeks, I think is what he said. And I don't believe that a quick agreement is likely or possible due to issues on both sides of the Atlantic.
And that's legally and politically?
Both. It is not possible to do a quick agreement with the UK.
Right, well, I need to think about this, so I'm just pouring myself a pan-galactic gargle blaster.
Chris, that's actually a Spanish orange juice.
Well, it's called different things on different planets. And different planets are important because spaceship Brexit, commanded by Theresa May, needs to orbit both planet Trump and planet EU at the same time.
It's an extraordinarily difficult position, and she was criticised by many for...
Jason Cowley, the editor of The New Statesman, has just done a long interview with the Prime Minister. He thinks navigating the right course between the US and Europe will be a huge challenge.
Trump hates the European Union. He's on record expressing hatred for it, and in many ways would like to see it disintegrate. Theresa May was very careful to say that it's in Britain's interest to have a strong European Union. Trump doesn't see it that way.
Well, let's face it, they don't think much of him either. In a letter to European leaders earlier this month, the other Donald, the President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, spoke of worrying declarations from Planet Trump and warned that
the change in Washington puts the European Union in a difficult situation, with the new administration seeming to put into question the last 70 years of American foreign policy.
It is beginning to sound like for Theresa May, being Donald Trump's best friend, while still keeping EU leaders happy in Brexit negotiations, could be one gravitational force too far. Jason Cowley again.
That's one of the problems for many of the European high command, the Eurocrats. They're appalled by Trump and Trump's anti-EU rhetoric. May said to me that she knows what she wants, but at the same time she's so hugely dependent upon the goodwill of the EU 27, the other 27 nations that have been spurned. Above all else, they want to keep the bloc together, the EU bloc together, when they're menaced by Putin, they're fearful of the Chinese, and they have, as they would see it, a lunatic in the White House.
Well, may the force be with her. Oh no, sorry, wrong universe. But is spaceship Brexit doomed to suffer a hard landing? Claire Fox from the Institute of Ideas thinks not necessarily.
I think that this sort of, now we've got a choice between Trump or the EU and who would you have? Well, I would say I'd have an elected president over an unelected elite any day, even though Trump is not remotely to my taste and I don't like him.
But Angela Merkel's elected, the President of France is elected, all the other leaders are elected, yes. and you need to get on with them if you're going to get a good deal.
And I indeed think that it's very important to show utter respect and get on with any elected politician. The EU, however, was not elected by the British people and they've just rejected the EU. But a more fundamental point is, I think that despite this idea that Britain will kind of like panic and how will it do trade deals, I think that I am convinced that Brexit shakes things up.
So that's the optimistic vision. There's a whole universe out there. Let's go grab the bits we want the best we can.
Absolutely. It doesn't, as I say, mean that you're going to get a decent trade deal everywhere you try and negotiate one. There will be pitfalls. What we've got to understand is that people weren't trying to be bought off by a cheap deal. We certainly noticed that with Trump's election in America, that the Rust Belt don't think that he's going to solve every economic problem, but they just couldn't stand more of the same and more of the contemptuous way that they were being treated by an elite that just didn't even notice them.
It would certainly be a mistake to underestimate Donald Trump. He is currently the most powerful man on this planet. But it's time to face up to the known unknowns.
Brexit, Perplexed.
We simply don't know how the Trump presidency will pan out, and that means Brexit decisions may have to be made in a highly unpredictable world. I wonder what the Hitchhiker's Guide has to say.
To summarise the summary, anyone who is capable of getting themselves made president should on no account be allowed to do the job. To summarise the summary of the summary, people are a problem.
Well, if the atmosphere on planet Trump proves too volatile, where else could we turn to for the free trade agreements we need? India and China are big, but they're hardly the easiest places to seal quick deals. Andrew Lillico argues that we should stick with what we know.
Some trade deals that we want in the future may be part of a new geopolitical partnership. So I think that we should be seeking a new geopolitical partnership with Canada, Australia and New Zealand. We call it the CANZA concept.
But you need people to trade with, and Canada's smaller than Germany, Australia's smaller than France, and New Zealand's probably less than half the size of Belgium. It's not huge, is it? It's not a big part of the world economy.
No, I didn't claim it was. But those 4 countries, Canada, Australia, New Zealand and the UK, would be collectively the world's 4th largest economy. So that's a non-trivial amount.
They share values.
And they share very similar values and outlooks.
It's true, there is a big universe out there, but you still need someone who's going to watch your back. Jason Cowley says Theresa May was very pleased that she got Donald Trump to commit himself 100% to NATO, a useful reminder to the rest of Europe that the UK has influence.
Yeah, that's her strongest hand, I think. And I asked her, I said, did you get this guarantee in private as well as at the press conference in the White House? And she said she did. And she also said to me, he also said it into the microphone, which I thought was sort of, in a way, slightly an act of special pleading. Yes, he did. I did get the guarantee. It's so important to her.
And yet 2 days later, we hear that he spoke to Francois Hollande on the telephone and said America wants its money back from NATO. So again, it's that unpredictability.
Also, it's how erratic it is. If you recall, when Michael Gove went to see him and interviewed him, on the one hand, he was saying the British would be at the front of the queue for a free trade deal with the United States. A German journalist is in the room, and at the same time, to the German journalist, Trump's saying he's going to slap 35% tariffs on German cars. So by instinct, he's a protectionist and an isolationist. May wants him to be the opposite on both of these things.
So plenty of questions remain as we prepare to hurtle into the asteroid belt of actual Brexit negotiations and transatlantic trade talks. But what about the biggest question of all?
The answer to everything. Life, the universe, and everything is 42.
42? Whew, that's a relief. I was beginning to worry that the answer might be Article 50.